Hello, Shamash here. I'm author of Mindfulness for Dummies. Interesting question this morning from someone in our daily mindfulness club. And she asked, is mindfulness a form of meditation or is meditation a form of mindfulness? And she also asked, how is all this stuff linked to ACT, which I sometimes talk about, acceptance and commitment training? So I would say that mindfulness is one form of meditation. There are actually loads and loads. Maybe there's even hundreds of different types of meditations. You could probably put them into several or just a few categories. But the two main popular ones in the West, one of them are the mindfulness meditations, and the other ones are the mantra based meditations. And mantra based meditations are when you repeat a word or a phrase. Sometimes they're just a common phrase like breathing in, I feel calm, breathing out, I smile. Or it could be a certain Sanskrit word or something like that, or it could be a phrase that just comes to mind. It could be a secret mantra, like I was given once a while back. So there's all sorts of different mantras that you can be given, or words or phrases you could repeat, and that's the group of meditations called mantra meditations. And then the mindfulness meditations, they tend to be more focusing on the present moment. So it could be focusing on your breathing or your bodily sensations or sounds, thoughts, feelings. In fact, whatever arises in consciousness. And it's about being present to them and then also bringing certain attitudes, kindness, curiosity, acceptance is a big one. And what we're realizing more and more is the skill of stepping back into the observing self or the transcendent self is a really important type of mindfulness skill. So mindfulness is a form of meditation. Having said that, the interesting difference between mindfulness and other forms of meditation is that usually other meditations, you do the practice and then that's it. You get on with your day. Whereas the mindfulness approach is that you don't just cultivate mindfulness in the meditation, but you can actually cultivate mindfulness at any time during the day. So it could be when you're walking or talking or listening to a Facebook Live or whatever activity you're doing, especially if it's a kind of a slightly repetitive activity, something that you don't necessarily normally need to give a lot of attention to. And even something like driving a car, after a while, it becomes so automatic that it's easy to be unmindful. Or something like brushing our teeth or cleaning or getting dressed, you can bring mindfulness to it, you can bring an awareness to it. And so what happens is that you start cultivating mindfulness in your normal everyday life, and that makes the meditation easier too. You become more present in the meditation. So it kind of works hand in hand. You practice the mindfulness meditations, whether it's feeling your breathing or your bodily sensations or listening to sounds. And then you find that in your everyday life, it's easier to be present and to be in the here and now. And your mind is less likely to wander off into worrying thoughts or stressful thoughts. And then at the same time, as you become more present and mindful, like let's say, for example, you're listening to me right now, and it is easy for you to pay attention to what I'm doing and to stay engaged, then you're starting to cultivate even more mindfulness energy, I guess. And then when you are doing your meditation, it will be a little bit easier for you. There's nothing wrong with your mind wandering in meditation. That is obviously going to happen, but you can make peace with that more, and you're going to notice it and just naturally catch it a little bit more often too. So that's one of the real key differences between the mindfulness and mindfulness meditations, and I would say other forms of meditation. Having said that, I have been guiding meditation every morning live for the last few months, and I like to bring some of the different elements and different types of meditation into mindfulness. So the guy who first brought mindfulness to the West, at least from a research perspective, John Kabat-Zinn, he did the standardized ones like the breathing and the body sensations and the sounds and mindfulness of thoughts. But he also introduced a few visual meditations, a couple of ones that are quite well known, lake meditation and mountain meditation. And I found when I was teaching, people found it really engaging and they really got into the moment when they did it. And so I've started to bring some visual imagery into my guided mindfulness meditations. And I find it really interesting. You can discover something new, gets you into a different state of mind, and I would argue it is a form of mindful meditation too. I think we can bring creativity to mindfulness, and that's okay. Uh, it's not about being just bringing lots of imagery all the time into the mindfulness. It's about cultivating present moment awareness, but you can use imagery as part of that. And then you can also bring the mantra meditations. So, like, you can say certain words or phrases as you breathe in and out. Sometimes people like counting their breaths, for example. So there can be a little bit of a merging of the different types of meditation to get together. And I would argue that is a form of creativity, isn't it? Whenever something new is created, you take two things and you start to bring them together, and something new is created there. And so that's the creative element of mindfulness that I'm so keen to bring into mindfulness, which is that it's not just some fixed technique from thousands of years ago that we need to just carry on, keep repeating. We need to be alive to what's happening in our modern society, what works for each individual person, and to bring those to bear, because it's not about mindfulness. It's about using any strategy that works for you to help you to live a wiser, kinder life. And so, if that means doing a different type of meditation, or merging different types of meditation, or doing mindful movements, or yoga, or Tai Chi, or Qigong, or martial arts, I don't know, whatever it is for you, you need to find what works for you. So it's about exploring and having some fun and trying new things. So that's important. Now, the other part of the question was, how is this mindfulness and meditation stuff linked to ACT? So some of you may have heard of ACT, acceptance and commitment training. So around the same time, the 1970s, when mindfulness was starting to be researched in the West, at the same time, another form of research in a totally different track, not looking at the other research, was starting to be done on on these different processes. So they're doing very basic level research, and they were trying to again work out what creates a life well lived, a life of well-being, a life of resilience, and looking at the way the brain works. And they found that certain skills were absolutely fundamental for human beings to suffer less. And as it turned out, just from the basic research, it was these four different types of mindfulness skills. The first one, which is the most common one that we know in mindfulness, which is about being in the present, but being in the present in a flexible way. But then the second one was acceptance, which is about learning to accept what's already here and now. Doesn't mean accept everything in your life, but it means in moment now, accepting that these are the thoughts that I'm having, these are the feelings I'm having, these are the bodily sensations I've got right now. So rather than going from avoidance, going to acceptance. So that's the second thing they discovered. Third skill of mindfulness, they called it mindfulness later, but they didn't at the time. Third skill they discovered is the skill to be able to unhook unhelpful thoughts. So having the skill of unhooking, they call it cognitive diffusion, that they found was a really important skill to develop. Um, and they found that you didn't just have to do meditations to do this. You can do really weird things, like if you have the thought like I'm not good enough, you could um, literally sing that in the form of a tune, like for example happy birthday, like I am not good enough, and that helps you to unhook from the thoughts. Or it could be imagining the words very small or very big, or imagine the image of what those words represent on a cinema screen, and seeing it in black and white and back to front and all this stuff. They found that actually helped you to unhook from the thoughts. So that was the third skill. And the final skill is called the perspective taking self, is what they sometimes call it. And sometimes they call it the transcendent self, which is what I like to call it, or the observing self, which is the skill of being able to step back from yourself. So you don't have a rigid sense of self, you've got a more flexible sense of self. So you don't think of yourself like I am depressed or I am brilliant, I am anything, but just know that that's just a thought. It's just an idea that's popping in your head, which may or may not be true. But thoughts are just thoughts. So that's the way ACT is kind of connected to the whole mindfulness field. It kind of came in from a totally different research track and angle, but they've kind of, in some ways, they've merged together. But there's a greater flexibility with the ACT model because it's not based on one particular course, whereas the mindfulness, the older, I would argue, research on mindfulness was actually based on specific courses. Like you do this 8-week course or you do this 6-week course, and it was found to help with this or that. Whereas the ACT is these just specific mindfulness skills, and you can teach it in any kind of way that you want, and you can get your creative juices flowing as much as you wish. And as long as you cultivate these different skills, the science shows that it's going to be beneficial in reducing suffering and increasing well-being and develop a life of flourishing. It also doesn't even work on the individual level. It works in community level, it works in families, they found it works in companies and probably even nations. So I think the dream that in that field is to try and expand it out to think about bigger levels. So that was a long answer to the question, but hopefully that was helpful. Thank you for the question, and feel free to send any more questions through wherever you wish, and I'll find them and happy to answer them. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye for now.